It's time for the gem. Do you want to try a gem without musical accompaniment, David?
Yeah, that'd be
all right. Let's see if you can do it without that. Let's see if you can handle it. Phase 2.
Freak out a little bit.
All right.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell a story that I've been reading, following over the past couple months, which is a very frightening glimpse into our future. In Nepal, there's been a major failure with their public water systems, and it's basically not able to meet everybody's needs. So throughout these major cities in Nepal, private water carriers and private water tankers have been going around, fulfilling that need. And of course, if people don't have access to water, we want to make sure that they do. And if the government's failing for that, we're not saying that it's a bad thing for these tankers to be going around. But what's happening on the side is what's frightening. People there are paying rates 10 times higher than any other rate for water in the area. There's been reports that people have been provided with water that is tainted, so people are getting sick. And one of the most frustrating and damaging aspects of this story has been the fact that some of the providers of this water, so these people are coming around selling their water to people, on the free market, have actually been found to be destroying pipelines and public water facilities. So they are actually, sabotaging the public water system in their area because they want to make a profit. And climate change is doing serious damage to our water supply. The World Bank has estimated that in the next 5 years, 2/3 of the globe will have difficulty finding clean water to drink. So we're going to be finding this to be much more and more of a problem, around the world and also in the United States. And as this example from Nepal shows, that the profit motive when it comes to providing people with water is something that is very much in opposition to providing people with affordable and safe and clean drinking water. So in the United States, corporations are trying to control as much water as possible. You've seen a massive move towards privatization. A big part of Trump's infrastructure bill, for example, was actually saying that these cities across the country need to be moving toward water privatization and sell their public utilities to private corporations to provide water for people. And this is something that we've seen around the world, especially in South America. Remember, Evo Morales, one of his first actually major movements was in the water wars of the early 2000s, where they were privatizing water in a major city in Bolivia, and people went on strike to fight against this corporation, an American and a British corporation actually, that were trying to take over the water supply. So we see that lesson from the early 2000s, and now we're seeing it coming more and more into the United States. Food and Water Watch found that 59% people who get their water from private sources rather than public sources in the United States are paying 59% more for water service. And immediately after privatization, water rates increase at about 3 times the rate of inflation, with an average increase of 18% every other year. So the price of water is going up for people with privatized water. What these corporations are doing is they're coming to a lot of cities who are struggling and saying, hey, we'll give you, this much money to buy a contract to provide water for your city for the next 30, 40 years. And that gives the city a quick influx of cash, but then leaves the people to pay the higher water bills and are sort of held hostage by a water corporation for decades on end. Companies, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce this French word correctly, but there's a major water corporation called Veolia, Veolia, which was a participant in the Flint water crisis. So they were a corporation that was in there, and they knew about the damage that was happening to the Flint water system, and they didn't do anything about it. And the same thing with Pittsburgh as well. So Trump is moving towards privatization. And what we're also seeing is that more and more of these private water companies are sort of joining together. They're lobbying the EPA, and they're creating these front groups. And Matt, if you could pull this up, I actually have it up for me. Thank you already. They're coming up with these front groups that are trying to push this narrative that there's some dark money plan to protect public water systems from privatization. So I just want to pull this up real quick. It's an organization called Truth from the Tap. And if you see this, you scroll down, if you see this, it's hard to see on here, but if you see this chart looks very sinister. But basically what it's saying is that there are people who are anonymous donors, but these are basically people who are, donating to organizations like Public Citizen, or Food and Water Watch, or, public advocacy organizations.
Literally, I just want to underline this. This is not anonymous. It's great what they're queuing, but you think, okay, there's some oligarch somewhere, and you look up the FEC filings. This is literally like, you finally feel bad for some guy on the street asking you to help protect the water. And you're like, all right, here's $20. That's what they mean.
Well, and what's really ironic about this too is the way they try to, what they're trying to imply is that somebody's making a lot of money off of this.
Right.
When literally this organization is the one that's making a lot of money off of this because it's funded by the National Association of Water Companies, which is the massive lobbying arm for the private water industry. So, they're being very cynical here. But, this is something that's fundamental to capitalism. This is why markets are very bad at providing services ethically for people. Because when you have scarcity and it goes into a market, whoever has the ability to pay the most gets that service. So when we start to see water becoming more scarce, and hopefully that's not going to be the case, but if it does in the United States, if we're operating under a free market system, what we'll see is rich people will still be allowed to water their lawns and waste incredible amounts of water on fancy toilets and pools and whatever the hell. And, people like us won't be able to afford water for drinking, for, cleaning, and for cooking. And that's the kind of inequities that are inherent in a capitalist system, are inherent in a market system. And that's why we have, for so long, have tried to keep the private market outside of our industry and out of our water system. Bernie Sanders has made this an important aspect of the Green New Deal. We need to be ever vigilant because they are certainly coming for our water.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.